Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in for Major Garrett. Welcome to The Takeout. Tensions over the killing of a Minneapolis woman by an ICE officer are growing by the minute. And now a debate over whether this disturbing video shows a wrongful shooting is playing out in public, with the White House squaring off against Minnesota leaders. In the video, you can clearly see the ICE officer fire his weapon. But was he under threat from the woman and her car? Did he follow law enforcement protocols? The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, has repeatedly called Renee Good, the woman seen here who was killed, a, quote, domestic terrorist, though we're still waiting for evidence of that. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance said this.
You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. This was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day.
Minnesota leaders say the administration is rushing to place blame even before a full investigation has been conducted. Protesters
It feels very difficult that we will get a fair outcome. And I say that only because people in positions of power have already passed judgment, from the president to the vice president to Kristi Noem, have stood and told you things that are verifiably false.
Tonight, there are protesters in the streets of the city lashing out over not just the shooting, but also over the presence of 1,500 ICE officers there. A lot to cover. We're going to begin our coverage tonight with Nicole Sganga, who has been on the ground since the shooting happened. Nicole, good to see you. What are we learning today about both the ICE officer and about the woman who was killed?
Yeah, CBS News has learned that the ICE agent involved in this fatal shooting was a member of ICE's immigration task force, a special response team, and was an over 10-year veteran of ICE. Now, special response teams are given very advanced training. This is an agent who would have received over 280 hours of training in any given year. In addition to that, we know that this particular ICE agent last summer nearby St. Paul had been dragged by a suspect in a car ramming incident during an attempted arrest. Went on to federal court there. We have seen the images in court documents. And while, this case is barely 24 hours old, we're also learning a little bit more about Renee Good. She was a 37-year-old woman. She was the mother of a 6-year-old child. Neighbors describe her as being kind-hearted. Law enforcement told us that there is no indication that she was the target of any law enforcement operation. But we're still learning a little bit more about who she was. We also know that her partner was at the scene at the time of the incident.
Have we gotten any indication yet, Nicole, that she was anything that could be characterized as a domestic terrorist or a left-wing radical, as she's been described by members of the administration?
Yeah, I've been talking to law enforcement sources all day, Nancy. There is no indication at this time that this individual was anyone who can be explicitly tied to domestic terrorism or was a quote unquote left wing radical. We know that officers had asked, Renee Good to get out of her vehicle and that she did not abide by those orders, instead pulling away. But that's the extent right now. And one thing that has been pointed out to me by several ICE officials, including I spoke to a former DHS counsel today, a former acting ICE director, the former director of HSI. All of them told me that what the Department of Homeland Security is doing right now, what DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is doing by coming out and saying definitively that this individual was a domestic terrorist, is actually undermining the credibility of this investigation. And we should point out that in cases like this, Nancy, state and federal agencies usually work through this investigative process together. And today, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension says that they were informed by the FBI that the U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't wish to include them in the investigation. All of this further undermining and sowing doubts that this will truly be a transparent investigation. We reached out to the Department of Justice to ask them if they plan to release their findings. We're still waiting to hear back.
And lots of tension appears to be building between federal officials and state officials in Minnesota. Nicole Sganga with all that great reporting. Thank you so much.